today's video, I want to introduce metaphorical mapping in learning English metaphors. This is especially useful for L2 English learners. Now, when we look back on our English learning journey, we may have realized that we learned a lot of metaphors or idiomatic expressions. How many of those are related to human emotions? I would say plenty, right? Because we need to express our feelings, our views on the world or things in English conversations, and using metaphorical expressions and idioms is a way for us to sound more natural and more engaging. Here are some examples of the idioms that are related to the feeling of anger. Let's go over them quickly. He lost his cool. She was looking daggers at me. I almost burst a blood vessel. He was foaming at the mouth. You're beginning to get to me. You make my blood boil. He's wrestling with his anger. Watch out, he's on a short fuse. He's just letting off steam. Now, these sentences may look pretty random to you, especially when you don't know their meanings. Then you might think that they are talking about different things. So what do they have to do with the idea of anger? In fact, to cognitive linguists, these phrases are certainly not random. They show a coherent conceptual meaning, which is the concept of anger. There are two sentences in this example. My heart is on fire. He was burning with love. Both sentences refer to the idea of love is fire. So why will we say things like this? This is what we call conceptual metaphors. Conceptual metaphors involved two concepts, one of which is more abstract and the other more concrete. The more abstract one is the target domain, and the more concrete one is the source domain. So now we know the terms for different concepts for two concepts. Now let's look at the examples here. So in these two sentences, we can see two concepts, right? Love and fire. When the expressions from the source domain, in this case fire, are used to capture aspects of the target domain, in this case love, we now have conceptual metaphors. There are some prototypical instances of different domains. Prototypical is something very common, very universal, and ideal. In cognitive linguistics, these kind of prototypical instances of target and source domains are called prototypical schemas. Schemas, what is it? It's basically something more simple like a drawing or graph or table or some categories that can help us better understand some theoretical ideas. Okay, so now we know some prototypical schemas. There are prototypical schemas in how we can understand conceptual metaphors. They can help with the domain matching process to basically link the source domain with the target domain. This is necessary for us to understand the whole sentence, a bigger picture of the metaphor. Now let me give you an example of some prototypical schemas. This is a prototypical schema that's related to the idea of fire. We can say that event A causes event B to burn, or thing B to burn, or a thing is burning. The fire is burning with different levels of intensity. The thing is burning and is unable to function normally. The fire can cause physical pain in person C. The fire may go out. And a prototypical schema related to the concept of love can be this. So now we have seen the prototypical schemas of fire and love. We can try to connect the two domains. And here are some examples of the correspondences according to the prototypical schemas. The cause of the fire is the cause of love. The existence of fire is the existence of love. The intensity of the fire is the intensity of love. The inability of the thing burning to function normally is the inability of the person in love to function normally. The physical pain caused by the fire is emotional pain caused by love. The going out of existence of the fire is the going out of existence of love. Now, you might think, what if a metaphor does not fit into any of the prototypical examples or schemas? Then in this case, we call them non-prototypical cases. They should be written down additionally and be treated with extra effort. But normally, when we are trying to interpret the metaphorical meanings of some sentences, we will first resort to prototypical schemas and examples. How can we identify the connections and links between conceptual meanings from the source domain and the target domains? And that is why we need to use metaphorical mapping. Metaphorical mapping is the specific method to connect the relation of the literal object with abstract metaphorical meaning. In this example, we use the prototypical schema of the anger is heat or the anger is fire metaphor. Let's take a look at the sentence. Those are inflammatory remarks. To make metaphorical mapping, there are mainly two versions. The first one is the easier one. We can simply write the source domain is fire, the target domain is anger, and the mapping between the two domains will be the fire is anger. Easy. However, we also have a more complex one. We'll simply write source domain. When something is inflamed, it becomes red, swollen, heated, and painful. And for the target domain, we can write when someone says something very hurtful, it will cause people to be angry and agitated. In this case, the mapping between the two domains will be something like this. When someone makes an inflammatory remark or says something inflammatory, it will cause other people to be angry. Then we understand the meaning of the sentence. Since my mother tongue is Chinese, we actually have something similar to anger is fire in English. In Chinese, we say 怒火 is the same as anger is fire, basically. In this case, we can simply use the easier version to map the two conceptual domains, and it can save us a lot of time. However, there are many other metaphors and expressions that don't even exist in our first language. Then we could use the second version of mapping to help us better understand the idea behind and link the two domains together. Here is an example that doesn't exist in Chinese. You're driving me nuts. In Chinese, we simply have no way to process driving and nuts as an anger metaphor. So we better rely on metaphorical mapping, and especially the second version to understand the sentence. So the analysis will be this. The source domain being, if things get consumed by fire to their limits, they can't serve their normal function anymore. Target domain being, if people get angrier till they reach their limits, they can't think normally anymore. Then the meaning of this whole sentence becomes clear. It basically means someone is very angry or someone keeps getting angrier till a point that he or she somehow feels insane and crazy. Metaphorical mapping instruction can be seen as beneficial to teaching metaphors to L2 learners, as it can assist L2 learners to connect the relations between the literal meanings and metaphorical meanings, even if such mapping relations don't exist in their L1. Before we finish the video, let's have a look at a quiz. How will you understand the idiom "come under fire"? Now there are two versions of mapping. The first one is Source domain could be fire, or in this case, we better write gunfire or weapon because it says under fire, which reflects on an image of a battlefield. And the target domain being anger or attack. The second versions of mapping could be source domain. A soldier is attacked directly by gunfire or weapons. In the target domain, if a person makes others angry, they can be attacked by a lot of criticism. So the whole sentence can be understood in this way. Some people are criticized by others because they probably did something hurtful or something negative. And here's an example sentence. The government came under fire after releasing the unreasonable traffic regulations. You may also try to extend metaphorical mapping to understanding other kinds of metaphors or idioms related to other types of human emotions like happiness or fear.